Nathan Lyon is standing in the Lord's long room. This is not where players usually stand. Why would they want to be in the middle of a crowd when waiting to bat, especially as an away player? They are usually on the boundary or in the change room. The long room is about watching, not playing. But Nathan Lyon is there because of his understanding for the law, a rare injury, and his own determination. It will end up being the second most interesting thing that happens in the long room during this test. But this incident tells you a lot about Nathan Lyon. He could have decided not to bat with this injury, one that will end his run of 100 straight tests, the 6th longest streak ever in cricket. He could have also stayed in the change room and tried to hobble out from there. But again, Nathan Lyon decided to be somewhere he shouldn't be. He was not supposed to be in the long room in the same way he was not supposed to play for Australia, and he certainly wasn't supposed to take 500 wickets as an off-spinner using cricket's rubbish skill and play 100 straight tests. None of this was supposed to happen, but none of that stopped Lyon. Remember that cricket is a funny game. 100 years before we protected our heads, players looked after their groin. So don't be as stupid as old cricketers. Protect your computer. NordVPN is the protection I use when facing cyber short balls or when the rights issue tried to dismiss me. NordVPN will help you get through the straight bat of any GEO blocks so you can watch all the cricket you want. If you need your pitch changed, well, NordVPN can doctor any surface to a new location so your IP address is set up for you to win. Want to buy an associate cricket shirt from a place that won't ship to your country? Select NordVPN. Want to watch a game on a free stream in another hemisphere? Give NordVPN the ball. Or if you just want to watch a clip on social media that the cricket board won't allow, promote NordVPN to pinch it. So if you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a cricketer protects their nether region with NordVPN today. It's worth mentioning how much of an outsider he was. At first, geographically, Lyon grew up in a place called Young, a small town in regional New South Wales, and it wouldn't be fair to call it the middle of nowhere, as Wagga Wagga is nearby, and plenty of test cricketers have come from there. But Young is small. The current population is less than 8,000 people, and outside of rugby league, it's not really famous for professional athletes. In fact, before Lyon, it was maybe most known for the Lambing Flat riots, where gold miners attacked the local Chinese workers. In cricket, and pretty much for everything else in Australia, you want to be in a major city for access to training and resources. Young is nowhere near Sydney. And to even drive there, you have to go around the Blue Mountains, so essentially drive away. That made it basically impossible for Lyon to travel to and from Sydney for cricket. So his family took him to Canberra. That was only a 2-hour drive in each direction, so they could go up and back when Lyon needed to be there. It was still obviously not ideal, but this young batter, and that's actually what he was at that time, needed to be in a bigger cricket setup. Lyon started turning up in the nation's capital around the peak of ACT cricket, when the Canberra Comets were allowed to play in the 50-over competition. They drafted in some stars, like the decidedly non-peak Merv Hughes, but they also had a young Brad Haddin. By the time Lyon came of senior age, Canberra were relegated back to second-tier cricket. This meant that Lyon had to make a choice. So he went to Adelaide instead of Sydney, where South Australia promptly overlooked him despite the fact they had a terrible team. And that is why you will hear the story over and over again of Nathan Lyon being a curator who played as an amateur in club cricket. But he was still around the game. That is why Darren Berry, the former Shield keeper who was coaching South Australia at the time, was told about a kid on the roller who could bowl a little bit. So he asked him to do that in practice. Berry claims that 2 balls was enough to know that Lyon was something else. And if that part of the story isn't weird enough, Berry just threw him straight into the starting lineup. And Lyon would end up as the equal leading wicket taker in the Big Bash, the early one before it became elite. And at the end of that, he was also in their Shield team, and his 5th first-class game was a test. It was 8 months after he was found rolling pitches. And let's be honest, Australia were used to picking spinners from nowhere on a whim. So what was one more? But this was different. His first ball takes Kumar Sangakkara's outside edge, and he added 4 more in that innings. It was a hell of a start. 2 years later, when he had proven to be the best spinner they had found since Warne, Australia dropped him twice. He was clearly their best option and yet still found himself outside the team. Then coach Mickey Arthur was concerned about his growth as a player, and then Arthur was fired, so Darren Lehman, who was a close friend of Berry, took over, and Boof dropped Lyon after he took his first 7-wicket haul. Who did he drop him for? Ashton Agar, who was just another punt that this time went wrong. But as late as 2017, Lehman says that Lyon is not a good Asian conditions bowler. Some of that was just a hurt coach after a loss. But there is an element of truth there. Lyon was good, but there was a feeling he couldn't really step up mentally for the last innings and that he wasn't good enough in Asia. The thing is that these were sold as him being soft or, not man enough for the big occasion. But the real truth is that these were technical issues. He wasn't soft or robotic as many of us thought at the time. It's essentially because Lyon is an overspin bowler and he is tall. His superpower is the drop and the bounce he gets when bowling. That is why we know his name. But it does mean that he is better early on in the innings and, unlike other finger spinners, not as dangerous at the end. He is a bowler who doesn't take a lot of LBW or bowls compared to most off spinners in the world. So in order to improve, Lyon actually had to fight what had got him into Test cricket in the first place and find out a new way of doing things. And it wasn't easy or quick. But you look at him in the 4th innings over the last few years and you can see how much better he is at the end of games now. When he started, he was far less like a normal finger spinner, whereas now he's developing to be a lot more normal and also what Australia want. Yet his main talent, and really the reason he has this many wickets, is because he's an all innings and all pitch threat. Unlike many offies, he doesn't need to be up against left-handers to be good. Compared to Ashwin and Swan, he's still not the southpaw destroyer. But it means that he's a wicket taker against all batters on all surfaces. Syed Ajmal is the only off-spinner better against righties, but that is obviously Doosra related. But Lyon is nicely in the middle of the offies, a long way from Swan and Pereira, who are southpaw slayers. But you look at Lyon and he averages almost the same in Australia as he does in Asia. That shows you just how good a bowler he is in Australian conditions. But let me show you this way. Lyon averages just slightly more than all spinners in Asia, confirming the thoughts of many in Australia that he doesn't step up there when he's needed. But look at what he does in Australia compared to all other spinners. Not only does he have over 50% of spin wickets in his era playing in Australia, he also has half the average of every other spinner in the world. None of this is normal. A lot of people complain that I'm not a former cricketer and so that I don't really know the game. Well, you know what they can't claim? That I don't know desks. I've been using desks for years. I'm a collector of desks, old and new, and I am sitting on a new one right now. I am the Don Bradman of sitting at desks. So when I tell you that the E7 Pro next generation height adjustable desk from FlexiSpot is legit, this is like Michael Jordan talking to you about sneakers. This desk holds 160 kilograms. It is as stable as anything I've ever seen, and it has under desk cable management. But really, the main skill here is that this desk rises and falls at the push of a button. And it moves super quick. And it has so many settings that remember your favorite heights. It really does it all. And I could not recommend the E7 Pro from FlexiSpot anymore, even though I am currently sitting on one of FlexiSpot's BS12 Pro multifunctional, adjustable, upgraded fabric, ergonomic chairs. My butt and computer have never been happier than when using one of FlexiSpot's products. So get over to their page right now for big savings. Lyon's record is not hanging in at home and cashing in when traveling, like many Western spinners. It is destroying at home and holding in Asia. Unlike any player from a big 3 country, has a lot more opportunities, which obviously explains the many wickets he has. But in Lyon's case, that also means that he has to bowl against India a lot. In fact, he's played more games against England, but bowled more against India. And you can see that by the number of wickets he's taken. And look how often he has bowled to Cheteshwar Pujara. This would be the 3rd longest marriage in Hollywood. And right behind Pujara is Virat Kohli. This is a lot of balls to 2 players with huge records against spin, and you can see that Joe Root is not that far away either. But the Pujara record is the most interesting, because Pujara doesn't have a huge average against him. After almost 1,300 balls, Lyon has at the very least played him out for a draw. No small thing against a player of this quality. But in a way, that seems like downplaying Lyon. But the thing is, many things do. The nickname of GOAT was given to Nathan Lyon, ironically, because he took the most wickets of any Australian off-spinner. And being that most people in Australia do not rate off-spin all that much, it was taking the piss. But the truth is that the total to beat for him was only Hugh Trumbull's 141 wickets. However, that is not just the name of a cafe at the MCG. This is a superstar player. Trumbull only took 141 wickets. It doesn't sound like a lot, But when he retired, no one had more than him. Also, it's not like he just played for a short period of time. He played over a 14-year career. And he was one of the best bowlers in the world in that period, averaging 21 and taking 3 10-wicket hauls in only 32 matches. It is hard to compare two bowlers from very different eras. But Lyon was never in the same league as Trumbull, who was a superstar of his day. Lyon still has the most wickets of his era, only just. And it is an awful lot of wickets. Obviously, Lyon's average compared to Trumbull is not really fair because of the pitches at that time certainly were favouring bowlers. But what about Ashley Mallett, the Australian with the third most off-spin wickets? His average is still lower than Lyon. So you could, if you wanted to, make a case that either Trumbull or Mallett is better. I mean, Trumbull doesn't have 500 wickets, but the actual length of their careers is almost the same. But you can go further, right? Lyon is not the best off-spinner of his generation. R. Ashwin is quite clearly the best spinner of any type in the world. And while Lyon is fantastic, comparing the two is unfair to the Australian. Even if you account for the fact that Lyon has to play every test and isn't omitted when the pitch isn't going to spin. But even if you push Ashwin to one side, what about Graham Swan, who is perhaps the best non-Asian spinner of Lyon's era? Again, he has a better average than Lyon, although nowhere near the wicket tally. And if you're a massive Lyon fan, you might be thinking, whoa, why are you talking him down here? It's not the first time a bowler like Lyon has ended up sort of polarising people. When he retired, West Indian Lance Gibbs had the most wickets ever. The skillful offie smothered batters for a generation. But he's almost never mentioned anymore. Being great at basic off-spin skills certainly gets you a shitload of wickets. But it doesn't really get the heart pumping, does it? Even if it's clearly as effective as any other skill in cricket. And of course, Nathan Lyon is no Shane Warne. That spectre has haunted all spinners in Australia since 2007, but it certainly bothered Lyon the least, who's just gone about doing his own thing. But it's not just comparing yourself to Warne as a spinner, is it? It's more that he is far more than just the amount of wickets he took. He had his own chat show, dated Hollywood actresses, and was Shane Warne. Nathan Lyon is a lot of things. Shane Warne is not one of them. But having said all that, what is Nathan Lyon? He's one of 8. That is how many players have taken 500 wickets in Test cricket. Is this list dominated predominantly by bowlers from big 3 nations of modern times? Yes, but look at the list of players around him. Broad is arguably the worst here, and he was bred for Test cricket. The tall seamer spent years trying to learn the art and still found himself who could be left out of the team. The same cricket board almost ruined Jimmy Anderson before we even knew how good he was, and then pampered him so much that he could bowl into his 40s. Courtney Walsh had to overtake other greats to get into the team, and then somehow took this many wickets despite playing for the West Indies. Murali had to fight the laws of the game, and he did it with so little support that he was often almost a one-man bowling attack. Anil Kumble bowled on some of the flattest wickets that have ever existed. And Warne and McGrath, they were fighting each other for victims. Not to mention that Warne basically had an action that rotted his finger and then his shoulder. Every bowler on this list has a great story. But these bowlers all had something special from the moment you saw them. Their eventual greatness was never a given, but that they possessed some of it was undeniable. You could hear it when the ball came out of Warne and Murali's hand, and the pace and the bounce of some of those other bowlers was just obvious. Nathan Lyon bowls with overspin that dips if you watch it from square leg. And even then, it isn't that obvious. He's the bowler who stands out on this list. Because to see his genius, you have to watch real close. And unlike the others, Lyon had this long-time sense of impermanence about him. And I don't even just mean the wider cricket public or the Australian selectors. His dad responded to news of Lyon playing his first test with, "At least you'll play one game." Now, Lyon feels like the most permanent accident ever. And because he's played all these games, he's sort of collected all this weird memorabilia around him. Like he is undoubtedly one of the greatest number 11s of all time. Only Trent Boult is significantly better in that position when regarding the amount of runs and average, while Zahir Khan has a much better average alone. But Lyon has made a lot more runs than him, and also he's so good that he's been promoted, an error on his part. How about this one? No one has ever made more runs in tests without a 50 than Nathan Lyon. Yes, it's very weird, that one. And it really isn't all that close. Kemar Roach is more than 200 runs behind, and Rabada is the only player of modern day that you could say would have a realistic chance of doing that. And also, Lyon is the greatest day-night spinner ever. At least in terms of wickets. And again, this doesn't mean much, but all these weird little things have attached themselves to Lyon because he's just played so much cricket. He's cricket's greatest link collector. And as I said at the top, Lyon has played the 6th most matches in a row. And that's really impressive. But he's obviously a way off the two Southpaw captains, Cook and Border. But Lyon is the bowler with the most games in a row. And he is a distance from the other guys. The next four bowlers are really all-rounders. So if you want a specialist bowler, Lyon has 100 on the trot, and the next best is Anil Kumble with 60. We talk about how the big three cricketers get so many more opportunities. Well, Nathan Lyon has so many more opportunities because he's almost never unfit. And there's something else that kind of makes him an outsider as well. Like when you look at Nathan Lyon, his mentors are absolutely crazy. It should have been Warne, of course, but that relationship fell apart very early on. So Lyon found mentors in the weirdest possible places. If you know the name John Davison, it is probably because of his 100 in the 2003 World Cup for Canada. But he was also in charge of Australian spin for a long time and was Lyon's main coach. If you know the name Craig Howard, it is likely because of the amount of times I have said it. But this Victorian leg spinner practically didn't even have a professional career. But Lyon's early mentorship was done by him because he was a former teammate of Darren Berry. And if you know the name Mark Higgs, you are a sicko who watches way too much Australian domestic cricket. To be fair, out of the three of these guys, Higgs actually has the best professional career here, playing 100 games for New South Wales and South Australia over a 15-year career. Higgs was born in Queanbeyan, so he played in Canberra, Sydney and Adelaide. And he was not only the first pro spinner to look after Lyon, but something of the early prototype of Lyon. And if you look at the bylines of most of the pieces written about Lyon's mentors, you'll also find one name appearing a lot. Dan Brettig, a writer who grew up at the same time of Nathan Lyon's rise. And the kind who upturns every rock and is willing to hit the phones of obscure Shield cricketers that you wouldn't recognise if they were sat next to you on a flight. And in doing that, Brettig has shone an incredible light on Nathan Lyon's career that often stops in the mainstream media once people have mentioned his nickname, the fact he is the chief singer of the team song, or that he started as a curator. But I do want to talk about his nickname as well. We discussed the ironic, now non-ironic, GOAT one earlier. But what about Gary? It is as lazy as nicknames get. Lyon's surname is shared with an Australian rules player called Gary Lyon. So Nathan Lyon is Gary. I don't know, he could be called Simba or Tiger or King, but it's Gary, after a Melbourne forward that even inside Australia is not exactly a household name. This is a very country or suburban nickname, the sort you grow out of when you become successful in your own right. But not Nathan Lyon. Everything. Because everything clings to him. Like when Lyon once talked about how he bowled ugly to be successful, that became part of the narrative as well. And so with that in mind, you could argue that Nathan Lyon has taken 500 ugly wickets. Of course, that's a little bit unfair. But if you compare him to the other guys who have taken that many wickets, so many of them have a predatory stock ball, or incredible height, extra yard of pace, the ability to move the ball both ways, or supervillain genius. These bowlers are the great thoroughbreds of our game. And Nathan Lyon is the ironic GOAT who stands among them. Just one more time that Lyon is somewhere he shouldn't be. Thanks to the kind folks at FlexiSpot for looking after my office and my butt by sending me their E7 Pro desk that save your favorite desk heights at a touch of a button. You don't have to crank anything. This thing just finds the height that you like and you can work. And their BS12 Pro chair that supports my posterior while I'm recording, well, this ad and all my shows. If you need great desks, especially ones that change heights, or the best quality chairs, head on over to FlexiSpot today.